Ask anyone anywhere to name a sci-fi TV show, and pretty much everyone will reply with the answer Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a long-running British sci-fi TV serial and one of the most iconic television shows within British culture. It has run for over half a decade now, and celebrated its 50th anniversary not too long ago. It's a show that anyone can love, but of course, with anything as large as Doctor Who, it is bound to have developed a following over its long life. And it has. A small group of people known as the Whovians. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a Whovian is a fan of the British science fiction television series Doctor Who, but I feel that there are much more whimsical definitions. The way I see it, Whovians are members of the ever-expanding Doctor Who fanbase, or fandom for lack of a better word. But you may be wondering, what does fandom mean? To put it simply, a fandom is a large gathering of people who share similar interests or hobbies. In this case, Doctor Who. But Whovians aren't the only fandom around. There are fandoms for pretty much everything, a notorious example being Star Trek's Trekkies, but there are many more obscure ones, ranging from BBC's Sherlock, Star Wars, Pokemon, and even the recent remake of My Little Pony, who members of said fandom unironically call themselves bronies. Silly, right? You may not have known about some or all of these fandoms, and there is a good reasoning behind that. They almost exclusively live in the shadows of society. Most fandoms, including the Doctor Who one, predominantly live within the dark recesses of the internet. A lot of media these days teaches us that indifference is wrong and that geekiness is unattractive. Because of this, so-called geeks become unable to conform and thus turn into social pariahs. But luckily for them, there are places where geeks can express themselves without fear of prejudice. The internet. From the colourful, booming Whovian message boards and forums, to the immoral abyss of 4chan/Who, fandoms such as the Whovians can be themselves without fear of prosecution. In the real world, our social statuses are greatly influenced by what others perceive of you and the judgments they make towards you. This relates to Dimbleby and Burton's creation of self theory, whereas ourselves are created and formed by the reactions we get of others, our comparisons with others, our identifications with others, and the roles we play within society. Most die-hard Whovians would be unlikely to identify or compare themselves with someone who is into something more popular, like, say, One Direction. And if your role was a nerd who watched a show meant for little kids, then, well, does that sound like the world's best pick-up line to you? But on the internet, where it is possible to remain anonymous, you can be yourself no matter who you are, and you nor anyone else cares about the consequences. This also relates to the ideal of Roger's concentric circles. We could put on a facade for our public selves so no one is none the wiser, whereas our private selves may be the strangest people on earth. I had an embarrassing experience related to this not too long ago in, of all places, a media lesson, where our class had to analyse a Doctor Who episode, Last of the Time Lords. Everyone was clearly ignorant towards the show, and when I unintentionally expressed my passion for the show by correcting the teacher when she called John Barrowman's character Captain Jack Harness, I was met with a few odd looks and even a few chuckles at the idea that I followed something as unorthodox as Doctor Who. On that day, I figured that it was safe to assume that Whovians are an obscure puzzle piece within society. But despite all the misfitting qualities Whovians seem to display, society will always have some place where anyone is welcome. One of the most social things a Whovian can partake in is going to a convention. There are numerous conventions a Whovian can go to, from the specially made Gallifrey 1 to the annual Comic-Con. Conventions such as Comic-Con welcome most, if not all, fandoms with open arms, allowing their members to meet and converse and socialise with one another. But perhaps the best thing about these cons are the interactivities. It's possible to buy exclusive merchandise and collectibles, and even meet up with the legendary creative teams behind Doctor Who, including the writers, producers, directors, and even the actors who've portrayed them. My experience with this was one year going to Comic-Con dressed as Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. The feeling was liberating, and it was exhilarating to be surrounded by so many like-minded people. But perhaps the best part was actually meeting the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker. Sure, he'd aged since his time as the blonde-haired Technicolor Dreamcoat doctor we all know, but it was still wonderful. I managed to speak with him shortly, and even got his autograph. I currently have it hanging on my wall. I also have a friend who managed to meet with and obtained Tom Baker's, the Fourth Doctor's, autograph. No, they are not related. Being able to connect with your fellow Whovians and idols is perhaps the most rewarding part of being in this fandom. You devote yourself so much to something you love so dearly, and it all pays off in one big nice bundle of love, acceptance, and cult-like celebrity worship. In closing, and to put it simply, I am a Whovian, and I am part of a fandom. Despite our silence in the public eye, we are a prominent part of society and, arguably, a very close representation of a modern subculture. Even though I may not be as serious as some of my friends, Doctor Who is still a prominent part of my life, and greatly influences my hobbies, interests, and even the clothes I wear. Some people may look down on us and think we're weird or abnormal, but we are a proud people. Like any of you, we live our lives the way we choose, and are happy with our social standpoint. Thanks for listening.